Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Therapy by the Book. My name is William Haddad.
I'm Daniel Villanueva.
And this is the show where we take one of your favorite fictional characters and ask the question, what would it be like if they came to therapy? For those of you tuning in for the first time, Daniel is a very good friend of mine. Like me, he's a licensed marriage and family therapist who specializes in culturally competent care. He's certified in clinical supervision, sex therapy, and trauma-informed approach. And he also has a background in teaching as an adjunct professor. And Daniel, it is so awesome to have you back on the show again.
It's amazing to be here, and it's sounding like we're going to be doing this quite often, and I can't wait. I think there's so many characters to talk about.
On that note, today's character client is a very eminent one. He's a very powerful man who's actually coming to us all the way from New York City. He's come out to the West Coast, and to put it in blunt terms, he made us an offer we couldn't refuse. Our character client today is Don Vito Corleone from The Godfather, parts 1 and 2.
I mean, what an incredible character. And I'd love to play around with the idea of almost being a devil's advocate in our own, I guess, in my own dark way, justify some of the stuff that he did and the reasons that he did it. Not that it was good, but just so we can have an understanding as to why these people do the things they do.
I think that's the first question I found myself asking clinically as a therapist when I was going back over the films and watching his actions and his decision-making process was, what's the motivation from his perspective, trying to see it through his eyes, for why he was going to such lengths and such, very brutal acts of violence in many instances to live the life that he was living and doing the things for his family.
Well, I think that's the word. It's family. Remember in that wouldn't be episode 2, but the second movie, we get a little bit of a background, right? We see how his dad was killed because they were trying to extort money from him. He wouldn't pay. And I think they killed his brother. And then they killed his mom, who tried to save him, tried to plead for his life. And they wouldn't let it pass because they knew he was going to grow up eventually and then come back after them. So mom pulled a knife out, but you can't bring a knife to a gunfight. And she was killed. Luckily, there was people in the neighborhood that took took care of him, and shipped them out and shipped them over to us. Somewhere in the 50s, if I remember correctly.
It was actually even earlier than that, but yeah, it was a really scary experience for him to go through. He was only 9 years old when it happened.
That's right.
So 9 years old, your father is killed, then your brother, and then your mother, all within probably less than a week, because his brother was killed, I think, at his father's funeral. And then his mother died shortly after that when she went to plead on his behalf. But I think the year was, I want to say 1901. It was like right at the turn of the 20th century, I think.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, because he was born in the late 1800s. So that would make sense. And so he was almost instantly an orphan. So now he's an orphan. He has PTSD from everything that's going on around him. He has these hyper masculine perspectives to try to consume, to try to understand how to live his life. And then he's shipped off and doesn't know the language and try to figure out how he's even going to survive. I mean, he's just a baby, tried or forced into being a man.
Right. Not to mention I think the cultural shock and
Yes.
And migrant trauma of being forced, almost literally at gunpoint from his home country, his hometown, over to America on his own. It was very haunting watching the scenes of him waiting in line at Ellis Island with all the other immigrants, and he's just this silent 9-year-old kid in a sea of adults and some families. But I mean, he literally had no one. He was a stranger in a strange land through and through.
Yeah, they even he even lost his name just because of his name tag.
That's right. Oh, that's
They
right.
yeah, they thought he was his last name was Corleone, but he was from the city of Corleone. I can't remember what his actual name was. Do you remember?
Andolini.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
Vito
right.
Andolini.
Yeah, and his dad was Antonio, and his mom was Sig something. I can't remember.
I'm blanking on his mom's name too, but yeah, it
Yeah,
was he's only 9, so he's not gonna bother to correct the customs agent. But what that
right.
what that means in the long run, is it sort of is the I mean, it's not sort of, it really is almost the official seal of approval on your previous identity being being forever altered, as irrevocably as his parents' deaths and brother's death were.
And it's fascinating to see how they wrote it into the adaptation of his life. But it's they gave him, and because we've worked with people with severe trauma before, both of you and I have worked at the highest levels of mental health as far as wraparound and everything else that we've done. Um, and we can see how with trauma they're either going to play out. Well, I guess there's several different ways, but let's play with the two. They're either going to be overtly aggressive, loud, in order to create a protective barrier around themselves, or they're going to be quiet, strong in a different way, more calculative, more understanding that like we were talking about the or like I said earlier, the masculine norms. He decided to be more composed, observant, curious, even as a little boy. And you can see it when, like, literally exactly like you said, when he was walking in line, he decided that he couldn't count on anybody else but himself, and he needed to become stable and centered. It's fascinating. Just it's incredible to see how the mind works when you're led into a direction like that.
It is. I'm reminded I'm sure not coincidentally, of some of the historical figures I've read about in accounts of the ancient imperial, tribal war conflicts across Europe from, I mean, really the dawn of civilization. But you have instances not at all dissimilar to Vito's, where in the history of Rome or Macedonia or the Persian Empire, you'd have many instances where there would be a sole survivor of a family that was massacred by
Mm,
rival gangs or war leaders, who realized that his one hope for survival was to, rather than bite back, which is what he saw his all his older siblings got them killed,
right.
was to instead not withdraw necessarily, but or not shut down, but adopt a much more stoic observational approach, watch and listen, and just not give away any emotion, just become practically a living statue, to be to conceal his threat level, as it were, to the powers that be.
Or even, I guess, indirectly his own fears. Right. He I wanted to say internalized them, but he minimized them, and tried to find control in any possible way he could. It's almost like at that point he realized, because with trauma, justice is it's a key word, right? Everybody's looking for justice in some way, and our clients internalize this idea um, that they can't wrap their heads around why other people don't think the way they do. It's because they haven't gone through what you've gone through. They haven't seen what you've seen. They haven't experienced what you've experienced. And as he's getting older and going through, his life's adventures, he starts to realize or justify um, the the decisions he makes based on justice. At least that's what it came out to me. It's almost like he provides or seeks or instills justice when the system's just failing everyone, because everybody's corrupt. And you hear that on the first one when he's talking about who the people that really run this, run everything, the big mafias, which not to get too political, but it's we know what he was talking about.
We do. Well, and it's also true that, the original film, the first Godfather, is set in the 1950s. Oh, actually, the late 40s, early 50s. It spans a good couple of years. But that was a time where corruption was a lot more widespread, to the point that it was even normalized. I remember reading one of the Philip Marlowe detective novels by Raymond Chandler that's actually set right around that same time period, like 48, 49, which is, I think, the same year The Godfather opens, with that famous wedding scene. And the protagonist, Marlowe, who, is a contemporary creation, Chandler was writing in the same year as the book takes place, remarks at one point on how it's very unlikely that this cop he's dealing with could maybe be one of the few honest ones. He's sort of weighing in his mind whether or not this cop is really worth taking the risk because he might be honest. It's just such a norm to expect that every cop was corrupt in some way, on the payroll in some way.
Yeah.
And so I think the logic that that the Godfather is so focused on is not without justification, because from his logic, it's like at least we're honest about it. At least we're honest that our justice is brutal. We're not trying to be hypocritical about what we're doing.
But brutal with
or can be brutal. Maybe.
I wanted to say necessary violence, which is a horrible thing to say. Man. I know. Sorry to all the listeners, but it wasn't senseless violence. Which, I mean, depending on perspectives, right? If you're on the other side of it, it seems pretty senseless. But just focusing on what he's seeing through his purview, wasn't senseless. He was pushing for loyalty. He was punishing betrayal. Everything that really. He internalized this morality that he developed in his own mind based on his life experiences. I mean, man, you're like we said a few minutes ago, your whole family gets slaughtered, and then you get shipped off in that boat ride. Can you imagine that boat ride in the 20s?
Oh my gosh!
Must have been, oh man,
utter hell. Probably.
I could not even imagine, and they were stowaways, right? It wasn't. Like they were living on a carnival cruise. You're going to the restroom in buckets or on the floor. It's just hell. And so he learned to observe. He learned to create. I don't know. I keep wanting to say vendetta, but it's not a vendetta. He's not trying to. But it's not.
It wasn't code. Balance. Yeah, yes. Balance. That's balance. The word. That's balance. The word. Yeah. Well, and the balance, we see him, I think, first start to establish that balance about halfway through part 2, because we do miss. I was kind of bummed watching part 2 again that the movie did this. It skips over from when he arrives in Ellis Island. We then jump to 1917. He's already in his late 20s, and he's married with one of his children already born. He's already got a job. A couple
Sonny
friends. Sonny was his eldest, and then the others gradually come along. Or Santino is his full name.
That's who. Yeah, Sonny and it was the two that were alive. So it wasn't. Michael wasn't there yet. It was Sonny, and they described him as the sickly one. I forgot his name off the top of my
head. I think it was either Fredo or Connie.
Fredo. It was Fredo.
Fredo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's already there, and I would have loved to have. This would have made the movie 4 hours, but I would have loved to have seen more of how he got from being this lonely, quiet kid in Ellis Island to having a wife, having a job, having at least, if not a place, then a sense of purpose, and at least a living space in the Italian community of I forget which part of New York they're in, but it was the Italian town sector of that time in the 1910s. Because that would have been really interesting to see that.
I feel like that's the therapist in you, man. We always want to know what happened.
Yeah,
we want the whole timeline. We want details. We want to create the full picture.
I want a biography's worth of clinical background intake.
Exactly. I mean, because I need the data. I need to know why he does the thing. What turned this person that could literally be a CEO, could literally run any Fortune 500 company. What made him go this other direction? We get hints of it, I mean, they hand it to us is what they do. He gets fired or whatever happened, and from there, they ask him to do a favor. I forgot, it was like smuggling guns or something, and they would help him out with, I think, housing. I don't remember exactly. And he does it, and he realizes that this is going to be the way to feed his kids and take care of his wife and survive. He tried it the good way, but then he got fired. Which, ironically, if I'm misquoting me, tell me. But he got fired because they wanted to place one of the boss's kids in that role, and it was like a crap little. I forgot what he was doing, sales at some restaurant or
it was just a local grocery store.
Store.
It was just a local grocery. It was just an imports of Italian local cuisine, and it wasn't in the 19 teens, it wasn't the five crime families yet. It was the Black Hand, which was the kind of the precursor to that. And the Black Hand operated a little differently. It was less of a, I don't know all the details, but it was less of a clan of a tribe, the way the families were, and more of a sort of I want to say sort of adjunct cell, like it had multiple cells of operation that could coalesce, but also were capable of just operating independently on their own, and tended to be more about shaking people down in protection rackets and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it felt more like gangs in LA, where there's certain blocks are certain cliques, certain neighborhoods, and then you go one block this way is a whole different neighborhood, but they're all under a certain umbrella. That's how it felt, which was way less organized, which makes sense that they went into something a lot more organized later on.
It does. And, you were talking about balance earlier. The first instance we see of, I think, Vito really starting to recognize that, not only can he push back against the Black Hand leader of his neighborhood, but also do what he does, but better, is when we get that initial favor for a favor exchange between him and Clemenza, who eventually becomes one of his top associates by the events of the first film. Because, like you were saying, it's not, Clemenza doesn't do what every other gangster at that point had done in Vito's experience. He doesn't come and threaten Vito to get what he wants or kill someone he knows to set an example. He asks him, hey, help me hide these guns for me, keep these safe, for a few days, I'll make it up to you. And he doesn't even question Vito. This is, I thought, really interesting. He doesn't even question Vito's family name or heritage. He doesn't question anything specific about him other than, are you Italian? That's all that matters to him. If you're Italian, cool, I trust you. Keep these safe for me. You do it, I'll make it up to you. And then he gets this really beautiful rug that he, borrows without permission from some high-end's mansion on Fifth Avenue or whatever.
Yeah, I mean that's where he starts to learn his own style, I think. And I would even argue that he's already developing it, right? This idea of personal relationships, and then favor for favors, and then creating trust. Like I'm somebody you can trust, whether that means that I'm going to help you protect your family, I'm going to provide you with money in exchange for something, obviously. But he uses charisma to be able to connect with other people, and he doesn't use brute force like some of the other places or other factions, I guess it would be, tend to want to do. They run their areas with fear, although fear is still, an underbelly of it all. But if you can build relationships, just like we know, if we can build relationships, you can take that a long way.
The word that came up to me when I was reflecting on this was eminent. I think that
Ah, I
that seemed
like
like
that.
balance through eminence with fear as kind of an undercurrent, like you're talking about. Because you're right, the fear is always there, but what really makes, I think, Vito's approach to how he to his creed and what he attempts to teach and pass on with limited success to his children is only turn to violence, only turn to the offers you can't refuse after first extending a hand in professional, courteous friendship. He never takes the violent or the fearful approach from the get go with any of his dealings. It's always, he's more than capable of doing that. And a lot of people are naturally terrified of him anyway because they know that. But he himself is not one who's going to lead in with, in your face, guns blazing, give me all your money or I'll hurt
Right.
you.
Yeah. No, there's no. It's unnecessary to walk in slapping people around when you can have a conversation. Um, and I wonder based on these internal rules, do you think that it was as a child that he saw people start to uh, I don't know, there was probably a lot of opium dens back then, get into drugs, get into different things, and he thought, yeah, that's not the way to go. And in addition, to see that the police and the powers that be are not going to turn a blind eye to that. They'll turn a blind eye to prostitution because they're involved themselves. They'll turn a blind eye to money laundering or gambling or whatever it might be. But for some reason, those little subtleties he just avoided. What do you think that's all about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a combination of the two, honestly. I agree with you that he would definitely have been averse to the idea of dealing in anything that was going to be a hot button issue for the law. Because as we already established, he had people in law enforcement on his payroll, and it was a given that he saw them maybe as not somebody to ever be friendly with, but as somebody that was worth doing business with in a discretionary capacity. Um, and you can't, and he knew that, even if there's hypocrisy in the law enforcement or the politics of his day, they were still more powerful than he was at the end of the day. They had more reach, they had more influence. They were not people that he could afford to cross, or for his family to cross. But I think the other thing too is that he wouldn't have known. I mean, nobody knew the full extent of what narcotics were, or what drove people to take them, how addiction worked back then. But he would have seen that the effects of hard drug use could be very destructive on a person's mindset, there in terms of their judgment, in terms of their perception of reality, basically their ability to function in all the ways that he valued in his clientele: honesty, courtesy, being able to keep a level head. Substance use can very easily destroy all of those things. So I think he would have been averse to that because it was threatening the balance that had been so deliberate in cultivating with his particular approach.
Yeah, I think it goes against his personal and cultural morality almost. I would argue that maybe there wasn't the research that we have now, obviously, but I think that there were a lot of addicts. I think there was a lot of alcoholism, obviously. I
Oh yeah.
think there was a lot of drug use that at some point a lot of these drugs were legal. People were just using them as is, willy nilly, I guess would be the phrase. But there was, I'm sure, a stark difference between somebody that I don't know, I'll just make something up, smoked a joint on the weekend, versus the people that he saw even as a little boy, addicted, stealing, acting a fool, to where he didn't, that wasn't part of his family values. That was something that went against, and created disloyalty, created, um, a feeling even within himself that this person can't be trusted. So he didn't want anything to do with it altogether. And on top of everything we talked about, you're right. I think law enforcement will come down harder on that, because it's harder for them to cover that up.
It is. I think, as you say, anything that was going to threaten to disrupt the loyalty, anything that was going to bring disloyalty or increase the likelihood of chaos, which any substance is, any drug use is very good at doing. He was going to feel a knee-jerk response to that. Although, interestingly, I'm going to disagree with you on the alcohol, because we do learn in part 2 from it's sort of retroactively in reverse. I don't know what the term for this would be, but we learn in part 2 from through Michael's storyline in dealing with Hyman Roth, who's the Florida associate, who's a former partner of Vito at that point, that the two of them ran whiskey smuggling runs to Canada during Prohibition, and that was how apparently Vito earned a good bit of his initial fortune.
I meant consumption.
Oh,
Meaning,
gotcha.
I was trying to make a correlation between if he grew up seeing the drunks, seeing the drug addicts, seeing the, insert horrible label here, that his mindset was, we need to stay away from that because it disrupts everything. It creates instability where I need complete stability. I need almost borderline like an OCD. I need everything in order, which I don't blame him. Order and the lack of chaos keeps him alive, and keeps the business going, and keeps his family safe, and keeps the family or the families of his people safe. So when we add in anything that's going to create any chaos, which he has grown up with nothing but chaos, he doesn't want anything to do with it. We're people that we work with usually when they find some sort of stability, and then we introduce any chaos. Let's say I don't know, somebody says something rude on the internet to them. They don't know how to function. They overreact. They overanalyze, because they're trying to create homeostasis. They're trying to calm everything. Where his idea is just to avoid it altogether, just to block it out, or even by force, say that we're not going to get involved in this. I mean, shit, it almost got him killed. That he went to the extreme to that.
It did. And we see, actually very early on in part 1, we see that one of the few things to get almost an instant, agitated response from him, one of the few things that'll get under his skin to the point that he'll lose his composure somewhat, is to have someone that he's trying to help get teary-eyed and start crying or show emotional distress. Like that just sets him into a, what is, full on, shut up, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, he slapped the crap out of that guy.
Yeah, you can be a man. What is this? Go do this. He's it's Marlon Brando's wonderful bulldog dialect for that scene. But it goes to show what you're saying, that he's just he's what presents as this wonderful, composed, eminent, and terrifying appearance is running simultaneously with actually a very fragile awareness of how delicate this balance he's created is at the core.
Oh, so delicate. That's the product. The word will come up to me later, but that's what we see over and over with these character types, right? Is this almost like this crab this hard outside, but there's something soft and gooey inside because of all the pain. Some of them get really good at blocking it out completely, and they force themselves, I'm going to say, for the lack of better words, to alienate or to just get rid of that part of their being. No empathy, no need for, or no want of empathy, and definitely no vulnerability, which we know is both of them are a superpower. But he's tricky. He's tricky because he uses those two, and those are the subtleties that I love about this character. Is that he uses both of those, uses empathy, uses vulnerability as a dagger. He doesn't use it as a superpower. He uses it as a tool to manipulate and to keep himself calm, safe, and ahead of the curve. Just like he warned Michael, who was going to be the one that betrayed him, by the subtleties. He knows how people work and how being I'm going to say yourself, but being vulnerable, which should be yourself, will open up this window for somebody else to show you their cards, and he was incredible at doing that.
He really is, as you say, turned it on its head almost.
Yes.
to use vulnerability to lure in his enemies and always stay just one step ahead of them, no matter what they threw at him. And that really, is I think what made him so successful as a Don.
Yeah, he was playing chess while everybody else was playing checkers.
Man. Exactly. He was playing 4D chess while everyone else was playing checkers.
Oh my God! Yeah, he just he knew how to turn it on. He knew how to use it, which tells me, or tells us, I guess, that there was a hurt little boy in there. Man, there was vulnerability. There was someone that never wanted to feel that sort of hopelessness and helplessness ever again. And he created this reinforced steel wall around himself by brute force at times, but mostly by intellect, by stability.
And I wonder too if that that might not have also had something to do with why his approach of balance and of persuasion through friendship and cultural courtesy rather than outright fear might not have also been motivated in some probably deep subconscious level that nonetheless played a part to have empathy, or at least the illusion of empathy, still be part of the equation. Because I'm sure, on some level, he never wanted to be anything remotely like the people that killed his family, and probably, to his dying day, despised them with every last breath. I mean, we know that, it took him over 15 years, but he eventually made it all the way back to Sicily just to stab his father's killer in the heart. That was how deeply he held that grudge. So I think that on some level, he may have been also driven by empathy. And ironically, that may have been what caused him to distort it, because it was the only way that he could still have that be a part of his identity as a Don.
Absolutely. He learned to use what we try to teach our clients to embrace as a tool. He used it as a tool, and I think a lot of and I don't want to diagnose him as a sociopath or a psychopath or anything, but I think we see a lot of people that use what they feel inside or what they see, because some people are completely disconnected and they only can use what they see, as a tool or means to an end. And I think with him, though, again, could have been the actor, Marlon Brando, incredible actor. Could have been the writing, or it could have been the directing, or a combination of it all. He was able to use it in a way that felt authentic, like it really existed. There was care. He did. You see it when he's with the boys, his sons. even his adopted son. You see love. You feel connection. You feel regret when he finds out Michael is following in his footsteps, basically. And but at the same time, he knows that he needs to reel it in because you see him. He's almost like is it Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the second one, where he sucks the tear back up in his eye? He tells his tear to get back in there. He pulls one of those and tries to calm everything down.
That's a great analogy.
Say, okay, well, this is what I need to do now. I let myself feel that, and it's over. Now I need to get over this. I need to suck it up because business needs to carry on. And now there's no turning back. We need to figure out what the next steps are. So how would you feel about a PTSD for this guy?
Yeah, honestly, it might not be like your typical case, but I think you'd be probably on point with that. I think it's like, this is why I really wish, again, not to get political, I wish we had an official diagnosis for complex PTSD, a chronic PTSD. It's not just enough to say PTSD or light PTSD original anymore. We need specialized brands, because it's true that it can be just so much more intricate and complex in how it manifests or even occurs than just what we are taught on the surface.
Absolutely. What do you think about a misdiagnosis? What do you think people would misunderstand with him?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think you said it earlier, like, some people might be quick to classify him as sociopathy or even psychopathy, that he's unfeeling completely, when that's actually not the case. But if you don't know his story, it is easy to miss. It is easy to see his expert use of empathy as a means to an end, and a nasty end, as actually a person who has no guilt, no chemically no empathy whatsoever.
Right. Yeah. And I like to look at myself almost kind of like a fly on the wall when I watch these movies from this perspective, and to say, okay, well, he's showing us who he is. He's showing us that there is empathy in there. There is a level of vulnerability that he won't let himself show, but they do exist. So if you were going off actions or specific behaviors, then sure, but I think you would be misdiagnosing. I would even say some people might think he's a narcissist because he has to have authority, he has to have unwielding respect, a lot of self-importance, but that's this grandiose entitlement comes from a place of trying to create stability. I don't see it as him innately having these characteristics. I feel like that, again, man, great writing or great acting or great directing, it's a tool, and he's using it well, very well. What do you think?
I would agree. I think the key difference that separates him from a narcissist is that he's not above believing he can make a mistake.
Love it. Yes, thank you for saying that. I was waiting for that one, man. Yeah, because I feel the exact same way. He'll own his stuff. He will own it, and it's okay. I mean, I guess leaning on the arrogance side, he doesn't make those mistakes very often or ever. So that's kind of a pat on the back for him.
Yeah, and he would be reluctant, to admit, I think, to anyone outside his most inner circle of a mistake, because it's
way.
Don't show any weakness,
Yeah, or don't share anything anybody's, or what was the statement? Don't share family business with anybody other than the family, or I forget how he says it in part one.
Yeah, I know, I forget too, but I know what you're talking about. It's just that, again, it's kind of the code of silence, of discretion.
Absolutely. And what about I said it earlier and it clicked for me when I said it out loud. Oh, what about OCD? Because he is a little bit obsessive compulsive, I would argue, but again, misdiagnosis, but interesting though.
Well, let me ask you, because like I hadn't thought of OCD watching it, but I think it's you raise an interesting point. What would you say could be indicators or false indicators, or maybe some symptoms, if not a full diagnosis of OCD with him?
Well, if I was to misdiagnose him, it would be his perfectionism. Everything needs to be in order. His orderliness. Everything has to go in certain steps. Everything has to be said in a certain way. Everything has to be delivered in a certain way. But I think those are all, the strong sense of duty. Those are all things that come from his life experience. Not that he's being obsessive that it has to be in this way, or I have to click this light 42 times, or the house is going to explode. Is that if I don't do it in this way, people die.
Right. As you say, it could be more a product of hypervigilance, which is a trauma symptom.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and what do you think about, and this is me, putting on my therapist brain again, but do you think the writer purposely created his different personalities within his kids? Because I saw that, man.
Yeah.
I saw that. Oh,
that's a brilliant.
Did you not see that?
I'm well. Okay. I spotted a lot of parallels between him and Michael. I missed that. No, man. I missed that with the rest of his kids. That's brilliant.
All of them. Oh. All of them are a specific representation of him. The bratty child, the tantrums, just like his daughter. But it doesn't come from, with her it's different. I won't even get into her, but with him, it's this I'm a little boy that lost everything and I don't know what to do, and I want to scream and kick and break plates and throw myself on the floor because I can't control it. And then we have Michael, who's calculated, calm, but also brutal and
ruthless,
cold. Yes. And then we have the chauvinist, the woman's man, in Sonny.
And Sonny's also the hothead,
yes.
who's gonna strong arm, gonna punch, gonna shoot.
Exactly.
Gosh, yeah, you're blowing my mind with this. I agree.
Yeah.
This is like it's each of his children, and Tom Hagen, the adopted one included, is sort of represents a different area of his emotional spectrum.
Give it to me. Yes. Yeah, because he does.
Yeah. Well, Tom is the lawyer. Tom is the one who went to law school. He's the family attorney. He's an intellect. He's the only character, I think, in both part 1 and 2 that never like viscerally loses his temper. We see him a little peeved, a little worried. He never loses his composure the way, not even the way Michael does, certainly never the way Sonny does.
Yes. And that's the other part. You see that in the Dawn, right? And then we have the visibly, unequivocally shaken, almost like wow, what's a weird comparison I could say? Like on Harry Potter, when Voldemort's one of his Horcruxes is laying underneath the bench I forgot which episode. Is it when Harry died?
Oh, are you talking about at the very end, King's Cross with Dumbledore?
Yes.
Oh, so it's the final Horcrux, the part of Voldemort that was still part of Harry. It's now,
and that's how I see that other son, man. I see him as the broken. God, I don't want to say spineless, but just.
I would say you're talking about Frodo, right?
Frodo, yeah.
Yeah, I would say he's his hidden vulnerability.
Yes, but at the most extreme level.
Right. He's all the fear, all the uncertainty, and all of the grief, I think, too. Yes. All of that suppressed weakness. Because remember, Frodo says, I think it's in part 2, maybe it's in part 1, that he was the one who was always getting sick as a kid, over and over again.
Well, he was the sickly kid. Yeah, it was in part 2 when they talk about the sickly kid.
He was sickly. He says at one point that their mother used to joke that she didn't have him. He was dropped on the doorstep by gypsies. He was just this, he was unknown, even if it was meant as jest. There was something about him that separated him from the rest of the living.
I wonder how much of that is even maybe a subconscious thought that Vito has of himself. that he never quite fits in, that he's always odd, always different. And that's why he's so passionate with his family, because he can, in only part of his life, he can be himself. But yeah, I noticed that in part one when I rewatched it once we started talking about doing this or doing this episode. I said, "Oh man, that's weird because that's all a variation of him."
And I think it comes full circle to what we were talking about before, which is that, once upon a time he really was Fredo. That part, that of him which Fredo embodies, was all he knew when he was this young boy alone in a strange land. He was cut off from his culture. He had no one. And Fredo, it would be interesting to watch them again with that observation in mind, just to see like what if anything we can see in the movie does he project, even if unintentionally, onto Fredo, or if Fredo is showing some something in reciprocating that on some level as an adult. Because I think you're right that it's that part of him, at least symbolically, if not literally, that we're seeing play out.
I would even argue that he that part of him never really manifested. I think it was a cognitive intruder, let's call it, that lives, that does exist, but he never let himself absorb that or use that, because at 9 years old, or whenever he got here, that would have ruined him. It would have crushed him. He would have died. He would not have made it. So I think it's something that's so deep within him, but it does exist. I don't think he was ever him. I think that it's just definitely a manifestation, or something that came from him. I also wonder now going into more of a systems perspective, did different parts throughout different parts of his life, did he instill these characteristics within these boys? You know what I mean? I wonder if when Sonny was born, he was, it's his firstborn, so he was pretty young. Was he the woman's man? Was he out and about doing, whatever the hell he was doing? Was he more of a hothead? Are there things that they didn't show us anything, man? And now I want to know. And then with Frodo, I keep wanting to call him Frodo. Wrong movie. It's
a whole other psychopathy.
Yeah. did he change for him? Was he involved? Because we see that, we've seen it with our own parents, but we see it with our clients. Is that this, depending on where you are in the sibling set, that's the parent you got. You got a different parent that, you're let me make things up. Your older brother definitely got a different parent than your younger brother, or you. And your sister got a different parent than her brother, and so on and so forth. So I wonder if the weakly brother, because I can't remember his name, was really a point or a downtime in his life where he felt like, because now let's correlate it. He got fired from that job, didn't know what the heck he was going to do, smuggle or hid those guns for that guy, started the process to become the Don. Maybe that was a low point. Maybe it was a weak point that he instilled within his child. I don't know. I don't know if I'm overthinking it, but I think that's what we're here for, right?
It is, yeah. Well, we can see what, in today's terms might be called typical middle sibling energy somewhat with Fredo, because he is always kind of the odd duck. He's not the firstborn. Sonny took that from him. He's not the smartest. Tom took that from him.
Oh, for sure.
And
even if he was adopted.
Yeah, even if he was adopted. Well, in fact, I think, being adopted only made it even harder, because it's like, here's this kid, he's not even our flesh and blood, and he's outpacing me at every turn, going to law school. And then, Michael is younger, but Michael from day one was always marching to his own tune. And I want to get into that more in a second, but
I would argue that let me interrupt you, man, because I slightly disagree. I I think that now we're looking at timelines, right? So now Michael comes along, and the Don's an older man. He's starting to settle down. He's starting to calm down. He's starting to think about his mistakes, man. Everything that he's gone through in his life, and what he does not want for his little boy. What he sees his middle son is I mean, let's just try to keep him alive because he's worthless. Is his thought process, or the way everybody treats him anyway. And then we have the Sonny, who's just a prime example of when he was at his
most temperamental, arrogant.
Yeah. and then we have the intellect, which is the Don in itself. It's a very, very, very smart man. So we have Michael, and I wonder if he catered to this idea of, I'm going to push you in this other direction because I want you to be more. I want you to do more. I don't want you to have fall into the pitfalls that we've all fallen into, that I've let my family fall into. So I would even argue that there's a lot of shame, a lot of regret.
So let me ask you this, before we get into the dynamic of Michael taking over the business. Prior to that, because this is a question, I think, for overthinking, because we can only read between the lines here. Do you think Michael, before the events of the first movie transpire, Michael making the choice not only first to go to college, which none of the other his biological siblings did, but also then after the start of World War II, quit college, join the Marines, and go fight the war, go serve his country, all which is something that, according to his siblings anyway, Vito did not want, would not have approved of, and all without his permission. Do you think that's Michael rebelling against the family, against that, against this perceived environment, or is this in fact Vito on some level subtly but firmly pushing his son and covertly saying, actually, I want you out. I don't want you to be a part of this. Go join the army. Get out of here.
Interesting. So, how about I say yes and?
Please.
How about I just mess you all up and say yes?
Let's do it. Well, turn my brain over.
Because if I was looking at it from this is a family in front of me, and I don't know all this other stuff, I would agree that he's being rebellious. He's trying to, whatever it might be. But now we're the fly on the wall, right? We've gotten to see all this other stuff, and I would argue that this might have been, and I'm going to lean into that it was, but let me, for the sake of giving it some, because there's no absolutes. He was still trying to get his dad's approval. I think there was something in him that made him feel like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not part of this? Why am I not a piece of this? Because you see it when he brings what's her name home, and the way he explains what his dad does, and he made an offer he couldn't refuse. There's almost a little bit of pride in the way he says it. There's no shame. It's all gilded with this idea of, my dad is a powerful man, and I am part of a family of powerful men, and that people's wills will bend based on my wants, or our wants, no matter what. And we make our own rules, and you see it. You see it when he talks about it. You see it when he's involved in it. You see him when he's going to visit his dad and end up protecting his dad. You see all these times in which there is a lot of pride, I would say, in what they do. And so if I would now to use that information, I could see going back and saying, no, he's pushing against the grain. Number one, to prove himself. I am not weak. I'm not like my brother, the middle one. And I'm smarter than Sonny. I am good. I'm a great warrior. I'm going to go to war. I'm going to prove myself to you. I'm going to go to college because I am smart, just like, the consigliere. I am all of these things, all encompassing. I am good enough. Love me. See me. where he doesn't realize, and this is his father's fault, not out of neglect or that he wanted to, but his father probably only gave him validation or whatever it might have been for the good things he was doing to keep him away from family business, to keep him out of that circle, and that made him feel alienated, man. That made him feel othered. So I would argue that all of these things, anything he has done, is his own ploy to get the validation, love, and acceptance that he's always wanted. He knows his dad loves him, but he wants that what Sonny had, that right hand man, that different connection. Although it might have been subtle for an external view, as a brother or a sibling or son or whatever in the middle of it, dude, to be the right hand man, that's huge. That is humongous. And I would argue that's really where all that came from.
I think the perspective of that influence of him wanting to prove himself on is sort of in a different way, to show not just that he's better, but that he's better and wearing a different color. I mean, not only does that make more sense in the context of how he talks about the family, the actual quote you were saying earlier was, "My father's no different from any other powerful man." So
Yes.
he's not rejecting his family legacy. He's simply in fact, he's normalizing it. He's attempting to validate it, and at the same time say, also, I'm different. So it's yes and again. It's not, no, this isn't me. This is me, and also I am more than this. And it mirrors, if you think about it, that same dynamic we were talking about earlier with how Vito first established himself as a Don who commanded respect through eminence rather than sheer terror.
Right.
So, Michael is, in his own way, he's imitating that same kind of behavior pattern to get, attachment style, go attachment based for a moment. He's learning that he's picking up on that learned behavior, and he's customizing it for himself, being his own person.
Yes. And which brings us back to him seeking approval, man, seeking acceptance, seeking love. And it's not just through his dad, it's through everybody. You notice his interactions with Sonny. He feels like the dumb little brother, like, just get away from me.
All right, and Sonny treats him that way when Michael suggests, why can't we just shoot Sollozzo and the cop who are after Dad? And Sonny's like, oh, look at you, little bro, kisses him on the forehead, like trying to be a man and all that. And Michael's just, he's not laughing.
No, because I think that we also, as viewers, unless you've watched Band of Brothers, man, or lived it, there's still people at that age range still around. They went through hell. That was war. That was some incredible stuff that they went through. So he is not as he's hardened. He's not as soft as his brothers think that he is, because he's well put together, polished in his own way.
Yeah, he knows how to kill. He knows how to be ruthless.
Yeah, if he has to be, but it has to be justified for him, just like his dad, though. You see, again, just like we talked about earlier, you see the correlation, right? You see how the director, writer / actor created these 1, 2, 4 characters, 5 characters that were actually whole cruxes of the father.
That's such a great analogy.
What about what was her name? Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Friday. His Michael's wife in Italy.
Oh,
was that his mom?
The woman he marries in Italy.
Yeah,
when he's over there.
Was that his mom? Was he again trying to please his father by marrying an Italian woman? Was he also creating a connection or wanting this deeper rooted or to fix a relationship with his own mom?
That's a good question.
A little Freudian, but
A little,
it
but
stood out.
yeah,
It was weird as hell to me, man. It was a changing point for him. That's when he decided, I'm part of this family. Sorry, go
it
ahead.
is. No, I was just going to say it. You know, it is poignant that he left, you know, to go commit that act of double murder, which then sent him off to Italy in exile for a while without getting a chance to talk about it with his mother or say goodbye to her. And it was, I think, you know, it's not. I don't think it's overly Freudian, you know, to suggest that, you know, when in Rome, as they say,
Yeah,
or Sicily, as it
yeah.
in this particular instance. But it ties into what we've been talking about, which is that he's trying to live up to his father's standard, and marrying an Italian woman, you know, in exile in his father's home country, which he's only
No, I
there
was just
for
gonna.
as a result of, you know, literally
No,
killing people for the sake of the family. I mean, yeah,
in his hometown, his namesake. She's from Corleone. I
right.
mean, it was just, it was a perfect, again, writer, actor, director. I don't know who did it, but or all the above. But it was a perfect correlation of, I'm going to give you what you want so you can accept me. This is going to be my showcase of, I have changed from the good boy that you wanted me to be to the man that I always wanted to be, and so that you can finally see me. You can finally see me as an equal, see me as somebody that's going to take over the business, see me as somebody that is good enough, that's strong enough, that's smart enough to be the next you. And I don't think, well, there is acceptance towards the end, but I think the Don at the time didn't understand what, well, he was in bed, I guess, but regardless of his comatose state, I don't think he realized that he pushed his son to do that. He pushed his son to be this so that he can finally get, you know, into the, I don't know, the metaphorical pearly gates, to be part of it. And then there had to be acceptance at the end.
Yeah. Although I'm realizing now too, the question of pushing him is in itself a little sort of paradoxical, because he also explicitly tells Michael that he never wanted this life for him. So it's, you know, the pushing is coming from a subconscious place, I think.
Yes, that's what we were talking about earlier. Yeah, no, yeah, I love that you pointed that out, especially for anybody that's, you know, the listeners right now. It wasn't purpose; it was a subconscious push, and we have these subconscious pushes that are we use to protect ourselves. Initially, but within our family unit, especially with children, or even with their wives or husbands or however, that's working out, they're influenced as well. So his influence, regardless of what he was trying to do, his influence went the other way. Where I wonder if in a parallel universe, you know, down a wormhole, if he was the CEO of, I don't know, Apple, and he was pushing his son to do X, Y, and Z. Would Michael have wanted to follow in his footsteps, or what was it? What was the catalyst, or what was it within the Don that made his sons worship him and want to impress him in that way, regardless of his push. And I think it had to do with exactly what we're talking about. It was his avoidant behavior. It was what we didn't see, is what he didn't do, is what he didn't say, is what he didn't react with, is what influenced everything.
I think it's really a classic example of children learning from behavior rather than from verbal instructions, which, you know, we've both, I'm sure, gone over many times with many clients, because you see him verbally telling Michael, I never wanted this life for you, and he knows. I mean, it's not, he's not just pulling that out of a hat. He knows what this life has done to him in the long run, what it's cost him, and where he's ultimately heading. So it's not that the want isn't genuine, but it's the behavior. It's the, as you say, the avoidance. It's the things not seen that really are what shape our children and shape how we as infants learn to make sense of the world around us, and then learn to act and move with purpose throughout our lives into adulthood. And then at that point, they've crystallized, and so we're just following the steps of that dance that we think is our own. But if we don't have that insight, if we never learned it either from our parents or a therapist, we're just going to be following that same trajectory, sure as the sun rises in the morning.
Absolutely. And trying to fix something that's not even ours. He's you see it with oh man, that poor middle kid. I can't remember his name, but we see it with him. Is that he carries that all with him. It's constant pain.
Yeah,
it's
Fredo.
Constant. Is it Frodo?
No, it's Fredo, like Alfredo.
Fredo. Yeah, that's right. Okay, poor Fredo, man. He carries that all with him. He constantly is in a state of panic, trying to find stability through complete avoidance. He went way the other way. It's the same symptomology. I mean, it's the same avoidant behavior, but just on a different level and through a different lens. He uses avoidance through anxiety, where the Don uses avoidance through stability. It's different. It's all avoidance. He learned it. He learned it from Dad, but he just doesn't know how to enact it in the right ways. It's so fascinating, and it's also going back and doing the family systems. Why didn't, because they seem so close, man. Why didn't Michael take on any of Sonny's habits? Was he disgusted by it? Did he see it as almost annoyance, like he's too arrogant, I don't want to be like that? Or is it, again, trying to please Dad, that he saw the contrast of how Dad doesn't act that way? And he says, no, I want to be more like Dad, because if Dad accepts Sonny, puts him number 2, then why can't I be that? I can be better.
I'm inclined to say the latter, honestly, because I think Michael shows that he's all, and this is a parallel he shares with Vito, is that he's always the guy in the room to say, when everybody else says we have to go left, he's the one who will say, well, why can't we go right? What's wrong with going right? He'll always be the one to question the status quo, and then insist that not only can he go against the status quo, but that he can do it and come out ahead. So, if he says, if Sonny acting angry makes him, Pop's number 2, that means I'm just going to act like Pop and I'll be number 1.
Yeah. Right.
A plus B
that's
equals
interesting.
C.
Yeah. So it's almost like he adopted the chessboard. He's not looking at it literally, or he's not looking at it linearly. He's looking at it from so many different perspectives and angles, which is what you need to be the boss.
Exactly.
That's what his dad does.
It is. And we see Michael fully, come into his own as a 4D chess champion himself in part 2, when he's just, running circles around all these other, leaders and hitmen, trying to figure out who the traitor in his family is.
Yeah. Oh man. It's such a fascinating vantage point to be able to. Luckily, we're getting enough data, but if we didn't, man, it's still, you can see the benchmark, or you can see the patterns. And I always say that and I think I said this on the last episode I was on, we're pattern chasers, right? And we can see the patterns, and we can see why and how they're doing the things they do, and what it all means in the grand scheme of things.
Going into now to take what we've looked at his background, we've looked at everything that we can and possibly infer, and given it a good overthinking. We have our client coming in now to the session with us. We know it's probably I think we said we're running with PTSD as the diagnosis. What's the treatment approach?
Well, with him, man, it's all about rapport, building rapport, letting them know, controlled disclosure, letting them know that where the fine line, very Soprano-ish, right? Don't tell me you're gonna go kill somebody, but whatever else you tell me, it's staying here. I don't know, protect his family, rational reframing. And then if you want to go into modalities, I think I would start with some psychodynamic. I would probably go into, the trauma, the loss that we talked about, the parents, the immigration, how it kind of shaped who he became, even that little boy. I always talk about the little boy or the little girl or however people identify in them, because we don't want them to go anywhere, man. They know everything. We don't want them driving the car anymore. We want them in shotgun. We want them always there to help us, but we can't let them drive the car anymore. So I'd help them through that, process some of the grief, maybe verbally give me some sort of narrative of like his principles and how he sees the world and why he sees the world, and through his metaphors and stories, the way he talks and all that, you can get a lot of information. And then I would lean into where I feel comfortable, which is more like Gestalt. I like the here and now, meaning I'd like to go back, but I want to drag all that crap to here. Because if we don't, we can't sit in the past, man. My theory is always that the past is depression, the future is anxiety, right. And when we combine trying to fix the past in order to control the future, boom, we have trauma response. But we want to stay away from that. So I would once I get kind of a framework of why he thinks the way he thinks and why he does the things he does, then I go into some present like awareness and Gestalt. I don't even know where I would start. Maybe empty chair, which would be weird with him, but more like some sort of a imagined dialogue, some sort of theatrical. Talking about what he would say to his dad and how he would do things differently, and to process the shame that came along with knowing. I mean, and I'm assuming, again, we didn't see that there's a lot of burden that goes with his life, where he feels like he basically killed his whole family. And then going into body awareness and stuff like that. And let me just finish this last little piece, and then I would use cultural and family systems, which I was doing earlier.
Yes, waiting for you to talk about that.
Okay. And then that's when I would talk about like his family bond, the family dynamics, loyalty, and the hierarchy within the family, and then within the pseudo family, and his styles and generational shifts, and and I would show him that how his sons are basically a representation of himself. So that he can start to realize how much power he really does have over everything around him, and how he can influence even at this age, because we're pretending like he hasn't stroked out yet, and that he's with us, that he can change things, and just like Michael suggested, I don't know how legit, we can, that's another argument for another time. He could have turned it all into a legitimate business. And, navigating those generational shifts, I don't know, strengths, talking about emotional openness, but with boundaries, right? Because I know this is not how he was raised. So I wouldn't try to force any, I don't even know what you would call that. American ideals that he needs to express his emotions, or no, I don't think that's necessary. I think he just needs to understand them, and as you know, through understanding, things end up going the way we hope they would in the first place. Just like I don't push for forgiveness, but if you can understand why your parents did X, Y, and Z, then the byproduct of that will be forgiveness. All right, that's my idea.
I love that. That's great. I completely agree that you'd have to just go all in with the rapport building to start off.
Oh, for
I
sure.
think if you
with
this client, you've got to Yeah, and it would be it would be a thin line to walk, because you'd want to convey that this is a safe space, this is an honest space where he can talk, and that you're trustworthy, because trust means so much to him, and that you're willing to meet him in that, to give him that courtesy. But at the same time, you wouldn't want to be, um, I don't want to say sucking up to him, but you wouldn't want to be appeasing, or come across as placating in any way to him too, which which if you've had practice with clients like that, you can do. But it's sometimes hard to do that, I think, and also at the same time convey that you're still coming from a place of sincerity and respect, especially with regards to the cultural element of his background, of his of his chosen lifestyle and profession. We wouldn't want to appear like we're, it wouldn't be good for the therapeutic relationship if he's viewing us as part of the man, or as some
Right.
some brouhaha with a diploma up our butts who's just talking
Yeah.
talking the wrong way. And that would be tricky if neither of us is Italian, so we wouldn't have that built-in rapport to go with. But I think where I would want to to take some focus, assuming we can get past the rapport barrier, is really look at language, really look at the concept of what, not just how is he describing his feelings and his reflections on life and his family dynamic, but what are the actual words he's using for them? Because the thing that one of the many things that made the Godfather movies so famous is that they brought into sharp relief the lingo and the jargon of the mafia. It's practically a dialect in and of itself for all the terms that they use to refer to things that you and I typically have very different vocabulary for. But I think that we could actually use that on some level to our advantage, because as we talked about earlier, he's not alien to the concept of empathy. He understands fundamentally, he understands how emotions drive people, how they operate. He's capable of recognizing emotions in other people, and therefore by extension himself. And so I think, really, really digging into that and exploring, and really, gently but firmly encouraging him to, at least in the therapy room to start with, use different terminology for some of what he's feeling, could help cognitively start to disentangle those threads of where does business begin, and where does family, and where does it end, and where does it become just family and personal, which is, that's the internal struggle so many of the characters keep running their heads into over the course of both films.
Well, he'll tell you where you need to go. The hardest part is going to be playing chess with him. We can't beat him, but what we can do is try to keep up. And the idea of that is literally exactly what you're saying. Meet him where he's at, not judge him in any way, and try to understand it through his perspective. And I think that's where the report's going to come, is to not what I would do. This is what you've done or will do or whatever it is, and that's okay, man. We need to make sure that listen. And this is my last thoughts on it. I don't think anybody's going to make any like drastic differences. But if we can create some sort of peace within him, and he can make amends with this idea that his family died protecting him, or that somehow it was his fault, or that his boys are one of them. Well, he didn't know about the second one, but one of them's dead, and the other one is now part of the family, and he can make amends with this idea that his family's going to be okay, and that he can die knowing that they loved him deeply, and that he did a good job, man. He was, and this is what I always tell him. I'm sure you do the same. Your parents are better than their parents, and their parents ideally were better than their parents, and we're going to be better than our parents, and the progression is going to go on, and the therapeutic room, or as we're doing it now, which I love, virtually, this is like a safe place for him to just, I don't know, this is a place for him to be a man and not have to be a don.
Mm, I
Does
like
that make
that.
sense?
It does. I really like that. Yeah, to be where really business doesn't have to have any play in the
No.
conversation.
And he can finally tap into his true authentic self, man.
Let me ask you, bearing in mind everything that we've talked about in terms of how much trust and how much honesty, loyalty, if not honesty, matter to him. How much self-disclosure would you be willing to share with him if he was asking you, to talk a little bit about your own feelings and background, whether he's saying it as a, tit for tat, or as he's saying, just because if I'm going to do you the courtesy of sharing this, can you tell me what would be your response to that?
I don't. Self disclosure is a tool that I use often. If it's used in a way that's enabling progress or creating a bond, then I think it's okay. But if you as a therapist, and I'm talking broadly up to the audience, are using it as a form to feel good about yourself, to feel strong, to feel secure, because the dawn is making you feel insecure, then I would question you're revealing. But if he's talking about, or he's asking me how I grew up or where I grew up, yeah, I would be very comfortable talking to him about it, and seeing the things that I've seen, and being involved in the different aspects of the gang activity, and everything that I saw growing up. I think we could create a relationship based on my, let's call it, minimal understanding of what he has gone through or seen, and I think he would respect the idea that I'm gonna come in with this knowledge that, man, I don't know jack about your life, man, but I do understand that sometimes we do things that we might not be proud of or are completely proud of, and all of it's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. I see him as a brilliant man, and I also see, and this part might piss him off, but I also see a hurt little boy, a hurt little boy that's never really been given a chance to be a little boy, to live, to be vulnerable, and we'll explore it all. But like I said earlier, I'm not looking for anything drastic. That doesn't exist. And I could be being closed-minded. I don't know. Please don't be mean to me in the comments. But I don't see that he's going to be drastically changed and everything else. But I do see somebody that can really make peace with who he is. It feels like he's already pretty comfortable, but just on a different level, and make amends with the people that he has lost, and the future that he already sees with his children.
And at the end of the day, that, sometimes that is all we can do as a therapist, is just give, even if it's just a day's worth of peace of mind to someone. It can be hard in the grand scheme of things, but at the same time, I've always found that it still gives me some satisfaction when I can walk out of a session, saying that was that, because I still did my job. I was still there. And we're talking about self-disclosure too. I think that for him, it could be effective. It could be an effective way to demonstrate that vulnerability that he himself has been running from for so long. And even if he's able to show only just a small amount of vulnerability, or even if he's able to only give it, comfortable expressing it in session, whether it's 10 minutes in session, or, or what have you, that'll still be something that he'll remember, that he'll carry with him. And I always say to clients, you never know how these things can affect you down the line.
I agree. I think that's beautiful. It's those little moments. It's what did I say earlier? It's the ability for him to be the man, to be a man versus a dawn man. I think that's a game changer. To be able to take off that what is it? Heavy as the hat.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Yeah.
Yes.
And if we can show him, as you say, that it's okay to take that crown off even for just 50 minutes with us, you know, I think he'd feel that difference, even if he...
Game changer.
Yeah, definitely. Daniel, it's been great, as always. Thank you so much.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I can't wait for the next one. When we got to get them to tune in, because figure out what we're going to go next, or do you have any ideas? Yeah, we'll be coming back soon enough, and there's going to be lots more characters coming along with future episodes. I'm sure we'll see more of the Corleone's family in session as well. I mean, who knows? We may even very well get a group family referral at some point. That would be interesting. That would be really interesting. All right, Daniel, thank you so much for joining me again on the show. Thank you, man. Glad to be here.